I got married right after high school. At first, things seemed fine. We were young and experienced and each other's first real partners. Life looked good, at least on the surface. Then one day, I came home earlier than usual and caught my wife with another man. Chaos followed, tears and begging for forgiveness, but eventually, we decided to give it another shot. Counseling sessions, late-night talks, promises to change, it all looked like it was working. She became this version of herself who swore she couldn't live without me, and for a while, I almost believed it. But deep down, I knew better. One afternoon, I sat down at our desktop computer and found her Facebook still logged in. Curiosity, or maybe just instinct, got the better of me. I opened her messages, and what I saw was exactly what I had feared. She was still cheating. My chest felt hollow, but I didn't confront her. Instead, I pretended everything was normal. That weekend, I quietly packed up the belongings that meant the most to me, favorite clothes, a few personal items, and stashed them in my car. On Sunday evening, I told her I was taking the dogs to the park for a long hike. Once I drove off, I texted our neighbor to see if anyone came to the house. Within minutes, she told me a guy had already shown up. That was all the confirmation I needed. I didn't go back. I had some savings, enough to start over, so I just kept driving. The next day, my phone exploded with messages from my wife. When I didn't answer, she began sending photos and videos of herself with other men, all laced with cruel words about how terrible I was as a partner. It hurt more than I can put into words, but I refused to let it drag me back. I focused on moving forward. I settled in a small town where I found steady work in my trade, and in time, I met someone truly wonderful. We got married, and life turned into something I never thought I'd have. Peaceful, loving, solid. Years later, I visited my hometown. My mom posted a picture of me with family, and somehow my ex saw it. She reached out, asking if we could meet. She said she wanted closure. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The conversation that followed was unexpectedly calm. She apologized over and over, never shifting the blame. For the first time, I actually believed she meant it. We both shed a few tears, hugged awkwardly in public, and went our separate ways. When I told my wife later that night, she got quiet and left the room. I braced myself, assuming she was angry. But a few minutes later, she came back in tears and wrapped me in the biggest hug. She told me she had forgotten just how much pain I had gone through before meeting her, and she was grateful that we had built the life we did. That moment cemented what I already knew. Leaving was the best decision I ever made. I didn't vanish under the excuse of buying cigarettes, but I did pull my own version of disappearing. In another part of my life, I had to escape my abusive mother. I was spineless back then, so I lied and told her I was just moving in with my dad for the summer and would be back by the end of August. The truth was I never planned to return. With my dad, I got my state ID, something my mom never wanted me to have, then my driver's permit. At the time, I felt guilty about lying. Looking back, I know it was the only way out. If I had told her the truth, she would have kept me trapped forever on her little farm, tearing me down like she always did. Later, when I was 18, I had to do the same thing with my father. He was abusive too. I packed my car one night with as much as I could fit and left. At college the next morning, one of my professors noticed all the clothes in my car and asked what was going on. Over lunch, I broke down and told him everything. He even offered to let me stay with him, but I already had a plan. After classes, I drove to my mother's place. She and I hadn't lived together since I was little. I slept on her couch for months before I got a bed of my own. Things weren't easy. We struggled to buy food sometimes, but we survived. I only saw my dad once after that. He swore he had changed, but that night he got drunk and tried to put his hands on me. I walked away and never went back. I have no regrets about that choice. And then there's another memory. I was 10 years old when my parents split up. My sister and I knew it was coming, but I didn't realize my mom had already packed suitcases for us. One morning, we went to school like it was a normal day, not knowing that life as we knew it was over. When I was younger, life felt pretty normal most of the time. After school, I often went to my mom's parents' house. It wasn't unusual for us to eat dinner there. But one evening, My mom sat us down and explained that we'd be staying there for a while. I didn't realize at the time that a while would turn into 6 years. We never moved back, and I never got to sleep in my old bedroom again. While I was living with my grandparents, my dad remarried. His new wife had a daughter, and she moved into the house. My old room was repainted for her, and whenever I visited, I had to sleep on the couch while she stayed in what used to be mine. By the time I was 16, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I moved out quietly, without telling my stepdad. My mom was in on the plan, though, and I just took my things over to my grandparents' place. It only took 2 trips to move everything I owned. At first, my stepdad didn't even notice I was gone. He only realized a couple of days later, and when he did, he was furious. But honestly, the whole thing ended up being less dramatic than I'd feared. Looking back now, everything worked out okay for me. It's been 21 years since then. My biological dad passed away when I was still pretty young. Eventually, my mom remarried, and this time, I was lucky. Her new husband was an incredible man. He treated me like his own son. When my mom got sick, he took on everything without hesitation, caring for her, making sure I was okay, and constantly reminding me that I was still his kid no matter what. After my mom died, it was just me and him for a while, and those years were some of the best of my life. He pushed me to see a counselor, planned family outings on weekends, and gave me the kind of stability most of my friends envied. They'd even joke that my stepdad wasn't my real dad, yet he still put in more effort than their biological fathers. When I was 15, he remarried. I wasn't a huge fan of my new stepmom, but I didn't hate her either. I guess I assumed the relationship wouldn't last. But it did, and not long after, I got a baby brother out of it, which made things feel less complicated. Then tragedy struck again. When I was 17, my stepdad died suddenly from a severe, undiagnosed allergy. My stepmom picked me up from school, drove me to the hospital, and after he passed away, she handed me my baby brother and asked for a moment alone. That was the last time I ever saw her. She was young, with no family or real support system, and I think the reality of raising both a newborn and a stepson by herself was too much. She walked away, and I was left holding my brother, completely unprepared for what came next. But I knew I couldn't abandon him. Both my mom and my biological dad had been foster kids, and I'd heard enough of their stories to know I wasn't going to let that cycle repeat itself. So, I stepped into the role of caregiver long before I was ready. Now, years later, I admit I feel some resentment at times. I didn't get the chance to live a normal life. I work long hours, I'm raising a 6-year-old, and I'm still figuring out how to afford college. But deep down, I don't want our lives to repeat the same cycle of poverty and hardship. I want more for both of us, even if it means carrying a heavier burden. My childhood wasn't just shaped by loss, it was also marked by my mother's abuse. She was cruel to me and my little sister, especially in the ways she twisted our reality. She convinced us our dad had abandoned us penniless and vanished out of state, and she cut us off from extended family, insisting they were dangerous or toxic. But the worst damage she did was turning me and my sister against each other. She created these awful scenarios fueled by alcohol or drugs, where one of us would be the target of her rage. The only way to escape her wrath was to shift the blame onto the other sibling. Whoever got caught would pay the price, while the other would get a brief break from her cruelty. It started when I was about 8, and it lasted for years. I grew up resenting my sister deeply, not realizing we were both victims of the same manipulation. Things only began to change when I met my best friend in high school. He helped me see how unhealthy and unnatural my family life was. Until then, I had thought it was normal. After all, we had no TV, no internet, and my mom was even a teacher at my schools, which gave her total control over my life. At 18, I finally left. I stayed with my best friend for a while, but when he joined the army, I had nowhere else to go. Desperate, I reached out to my dad, who lived several states away. I barely knew him, but I asked if I could move in. To my surprise, he said yes. Everything I owned fit into the bed of a truck, and while other kids my age were heading off to college, I was starting over in a new town with a father I barely knew. And you know what? He turned out to be a good man. Not perfect, but miles better than my mom. He helped me get my driver's license, supported me, and eventually encouraged me to join the military. I've just finished my first year of service, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground. The only thing that still weighs heavy on me is my sister. I haven't seen her in 2 years. She's 18 now, but she stayed behind with my mother. Because of all the years of manipulation, she still hates me. I can only hope that one day she'll see the truth and we'll find our way back to each other. When I think back, I realize how much closer I wanted to be with her, how much I regret not trying harder every single day. But life carried me forward. Right now, I still have 3 years left in the military, and after that, my plan is to go to college and eventually become a pilot. None of those dreams even crossed my mind back when I was stuck under my mother's roof. My first marriage was a nightmare. My ex-husband was violent in every possible way, physically, emotionally, and he was consumed by alcohol and drugs. He controlled everything. The money, my time, even the smallest details of my routine. If I was delayed just 5 minutes getting gas on the way home, he'd erupt. On a good day, I'd just get yelled at. On a bad one, I'd get beaten. We had 3 daughters together, and though I wanted to leave him many times, he used them as his weapon. He would taunt me, saying I could leave if I wanted to, but I wouldn't be allowed to take our girls with me. One night at a friend's wedding reception, he got drunk and spiraled out of control over something trivial. He dragged me into the street by my hair, humiliating me in front of everyone, and even pulled a gun on me. The bridegroom's mother had to drive him home. While all this chaos unfolded, one of his so-called friends pulled me aside and said quietly, "You don't have to live like this." Those words hit me like lightning. It was the first time it truly sank in. I didn't have to live this way. A couple of weeks later, after carefully making a plan, I finally acted. One morning, when my ex left for work, my dad came over and helped me pack whatever we could fit into a U-Haul. And just like that, I was gone. I'd like to say I never saw him again, but that's not true. For a while, he stalked me, broke the order of protection, and ended up in jail. Eventually, though, he let me be. I was lucky compared to how badly things could have gone. 15 years passed, and my life changed completely. I went back to school, finished my undergraduate degree, went on to law school, and even did postdoctoral work. I remarried, had 2 more wonderful kids, and finally built the life I had always dreamed of. But while I was building my future, my mother's presence in my life slipped away in a way I never really understood. My parents' marriage had been miserable for years. My dad was a minister at a large church, and because he believed divorce was wrong, he stayed married to my mom but avoided her completely. Their house was filled with tension. My mom rarely left her bedroom, and when she did, she was bitter, unhappy, and cruel, especially toward me. We had once been close, but during those years, our bond shattered. Then things started disappearing. One day, a bookshelf was gone. Another day, something else. Slowly, little by little, she was moving out. But I can't remember the details. The timeline is blurry. I don't know if it was during summer or the school year. I can't remember what I was doing the day she left for good. All I know is that at some point, she simply wasn't there anymore. I was 14, and my father told me that God had told him she would never return. I believed him because to me, my father was on the same level as God himself. Not long after, my dad secretly began dating another woman. The church didn't know about it yet, but he planned to marry her. I was forced into family photos with her and her children. Those pictures were framed and hung over the fireplace like we were suddenly supposed to be one big happy family. Then one day, my mother came back. She stood in our house and told me she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She said she loved me, my brother, even my father, and she wanted to make things right. But then she walked into the living room and saw that family portrait hanging above the fireplace. She left soon after. A few days later, she called the house. My dad answered and she said, "Tell the kids I said goodbye." Then she hung up. We panicked. My dad and I tried calling anyone who might know where she was. We even called the operator to see if the call could be traced, but this was 1995. No caller ID, no cell phones, nothing to help us. That night, my soon-to-be stepmom noticed a car parked at the end of the neighborhood that looked like my mom's. My dad called 911, and when the police arrived, they found her. She had swallowed a bucket of pills. She was barely alive. They rushed her to the ER, pumped her stomach, intubated her, and kept her alive by machines. The doctors told my dad to call my brother to say goodbye. I was taken into her room for a little while. I stared at all the machines connected to her body, all of them plugged into the wall. I stood there thinking about how she hadn't wanted to live, and a part of me felt like I should unplug everything and let her go. I didn't understand why we were keeping her alive when she had chosen otherwise. Before I could act, a nurse came in and told me I had to leave. She survived. My dad went on to marry the other woman. But I've never been the same. That time in my life left deep cracks in me. Even now, I can't clearly recall the exact day she moved out, the moment it all shifted. Maybe my mind buried it to protect me. Still, every now and then, it rises to the surface, and I wonder if I'll ever fully untangle the mess it left inside me.